Good morning, everyone. It's great to be in Halifax, although I've got a bit of a cold, so please forgive me. I think what you're going to hear in this presentation, and 20 minutes isn't a lot of time, is really going to echo some of the themes, but I think I might go deep in a few areas that I think are really important to underscore. I really think, Hillary, you set the stage very acutely, so thank you for that. I want to acknowledge that. And Mike, your opening comments with the humor and the levity sort of brought up the broader strategic perspectives. This is a time in our life, and I've spent 3 years working with Kathy Colby, the global head of Ernst & Young, on our weekends. She's a dear friend. Writing every Sunday and usually twice a week, 4 o'clock in the morning till 7 to write this book. This is my 16th book. My day job is CEO of SalesChoice, where we build AI innovations and products and have clients around the world. So I want to share with you in the brief time I have 5 reasons why we wrote the book and examine very briefly each of those themes. The book is actually coming out officially tomorrow, just so you know. So you're actually the first audience that I've had on the book. So just grateful to be here, and thank you, Sam, for inviting me. So hopefully all of this works. Pressing the buttons, great. So I'm going to cover off 5 themes quickly. I know the good news is it's counting down, so I have to be speeding along. I want to talk about, first, the scale of change is unprecedented. And those are points that have been mentioned, but I want to dive deep into some other economic implications. I've got a very strong business background. I'm a former venture capitalist, a former investment banker, so I always follow the money. So I want to make that point, because I think that's crucial that we understand economically what's really happening. So I updated this. I also am a board advisor of the United States AI Institute, where I have the privilege usually of being with 150 executives around the world every single Saturday morning, and people getting formally certified. And what's interesting is in that audience, I usually do not have many Canadians that are getting formal certifications. I get executives, CEOs, partners, CIOs, chief security officers, and having now done this for 3 years with the United States AI Institute, I usually have about 1% of Canadians. So Canadians have to rise up harder. Look at our productivity rates. Our current valuation of our country is around 2.2 trillion in value. NVIDIA is over 7 trillion. The UK isn't growing as fast as it would like at 4.26 trillion. We're closer now to Spain in valuation, and Mexico's creeping faster upon us. These are very serious issues. We have to recognize our productivity. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, it sucks. And from a financial perspective, if we don't start moving, like Mike said, and I hate going to conferences, Mike, too, where people don't move to action, we've got to get real. Or some of the horrific comments that have been made by the US, without naming names, will come true. I don't want us to be the sleeping frog who's in the boiling pot. I have a family, like you do. I have children, and I've got my first baby, actually 2 baby grandchildren. A new one just came a couple weeks ago. You can, obviously you're going to get a copy of this. I don't know how many of you read the U.S. Stanford Index report. It's something that I read religiously. I've got a few nods. Hands up how many have read this book. I saw one gentleman. Okay, a few. Please take this as one of your homework assignments. It clearly outlines exactly where we are as a human species. There are only 2 areas left where AI cannot outperform humans. The first area is in advanced, complicated mathematics, solving problems. The second area, believe it or not, is in basic human comprehension. But let me be clear, that gap will close in less than 5 years. This isn't like something that's 30 years away. We are moving at a speed that's unprecedented. And yes, we're doing a lot of this wrong. I'll talk more about that. The other piece most people don't know is these AI LLM models, and believe me, I've got a testing lab, I'm connected to all of them, we're building products, and I can see to the points that were just made on the hallucination, and Pam, I really loved your comment. I mean, that is so true. However, they're doing a lot of things right, but we don't necessarily understand that over almost 60% of the World Wide Web is no longer generated by human content. It's generated by AI. So we're getting into this dynamic of where is the data actually validated, that it's true. If you're following the fraudulent reports, you'll see the incredible scale of fraud as a result of generative AI. This piece really concerns me. We haven't spoken about it too much yet this morning, but it's the environmental impact. On the environment, this is the slide that just shows you the consumption of CO2 emissions and the impact that potentially a car has versus, sorry, I guess this guy likes me, versus large-scale LLM generative AI models. And you can see on this slide, and just to put in context, if you're following here on the data center explosions, and I have friends that are presidents of major data center corporations, they are just so excited because they're booming, booming, booming. The impact, however, is that if you take a 100-word prompt, we're using a glass of water, roughly equivalent. And I know we're working the techie side, and I'm a pretty deep technologist as well. However, we now have 30%, if you take just the US, I don't have the numbers in Canada, we seem to have more data in the US, 30% of US households is equivalent to what we're using now in AI and generation of electricity, right? So, and now we have to use nuclear. And where are we going to put all that nuclear waste? We've just announced, more data centers that are being created here because we need to compete and we want to have control of data here in our country, and I get it. So it's actually on our sovereign souls. I understand that, our soils. However, we have to talk about what are we really doing here. I don't know about you, but I've been helping so many young people find jobs, right? Like all of you, put your hands up. I mean, we are creating a dynamic right now where we have issues on the job front. There's well over 200,000 job cuts that have happened. And Bloomberg has also identified that we'll probably have over 200,000 in the financial services sector with the outlook over the next 12 to 14 months. Now, what's interesting, and most people here, I doubt, know this fact. How many people know about what China just did in their legal ruling about last week? One gentleman, okay. What's interesting there is that they said, it is not okay for you to apply AI that takes away jobs from your people. First ruling in the world with the legal turnover, it's not okay. As much as we are concerned about China and its dominance, I can tell you they signed the accord in France in February last year. US did not, neither did the UK, right? Although the UK has, backed off a little bit, and there's because of the EU and also Canada, et cetera. But, we're seeing some very interesting dynamics, because if you understand China economics, and I just came back from Asia, I think maybe that's where I got the cold. It was a long flight. I was over in Singapore, Womi. But the piece there is that they have to look at where are their people going to go, right? So that ruling is very interesting. Yes, if you're using AI, but what are you doing in terms of educating to help build that capacity and actually keep driving more capability? Very unlike how we often work in North America. The other, and I mentioned, I don't think did I go ahead here? I may have, I'll talk about this one now, what the heck. Employee well-being, please follow the Happiness Global Research. How many people here are following that? Okay, a few, yes. I thought Hillary might be. You're very strategic and panoramic, which is wonderful. We've got 2 to 3 incidents now of Gen X and Ys who are suffering from they've had 2 or 3 incidents of mental health wellness issues, right? Before the age of 32. So, and this just isn't a Canadian, it's a North American, and also if you follow the Happiness Index, you can see on a global basis. AI also is getting smarter, we recognize that, but we have to talk about, are we getting smarter? The research that came out of MIT certainly woke me up. And I've seen this with young people on Instagram, too. We know they get lost, and so do adults. You can spend an hour scrolling, and you totally cognitively haven't learned a damn thing. You've seen a lot of cool cats, maybe, and we kind of think it's funny, but the reality is our brain is a muscle. And if we don't start educating our little ones and the impact and taking this very seriously, nothing is more depressing to see everybody around the family table or at a restaurant, all on their cell phones. I mean, let's get real. So the research is showing we're atrophying our brains. The second reason we wrote the book, because I've only got 10 minutes barely left, I've got to speed this up. 20% or 80% of AI investments we recognize are not driving the value. We've touched on a lot of the why, but I want to underscore a little bit more on the financial front. This is your takeaway action. Every single business case that you look at the ratio of dollars that are going in, and if not, at least 30 to 40% are focused on the process redesign, rethink, and the change management process. You're doing something very wrong. It's not technology. That point's already been made, but here's some statistics when you get the copy that I think might be helpful for you. I want to talk about the lack of governance in scaling AI. Boy, I did it again. I can't process all of these. The book is full of frameworks and full of lessons learned. It was also reviewed by many notoriety people around the world because we really spent the time. It was an exhausting process. But I think the one I want to talk about the most is applying the risk management structures operationally and recognizing that it is a strategic look. You understand that. But start looking at all the AI use cases in context of the degree of risk and the implication that there you should have in terms of authority and accountability and decision making. So, separate things clearly out in terms of what could be AI purely led, because there's a lot of good things that AI can do, because there's a lot of crappy practices, that aren't really intellectually very stimulating for anybody. But have to think through where the higher risk domains are as well, so that you do have the accountability. All the research is showing now, and this is really an interesting point. We may say there's a human in the AI and human-led, and if it's human-led decision, but then what are all of the workflows in relationship to the accountabilities, and what can humans really do about it? Like, what can you really do? So we are going to need a lot more integrated design thinking and workflow logic thinking, and maybe more cultural anthropologists. A lot of the skills to fix this, I've been in technology for seems like forever, and we keep doing a lot of the things repeatedly wrong. Next point I want to talk about is on the international regulatory front. I teach AI ethics and law. I'm not as active there as I have been, but I follow and read like a maniac on legal precedents because I find it quite enjoyable. That's how boring I am. But on the macro level, the US, you probably know, you may not know this, we have over 130, I think now, regulatory legislations that's popped up throughout the various jurisdictions. So it would be seen as highly patchwork, highly fragmented. Leadership aligns very much with democratic areas, like if you look at the laws in Colorado, the laws in California, you'd see a lot of similarities. You would probably know that an executive order was an issue of a warning letter was sent out throughout the various states advising that if you, in fact, do not stop and align with our executive order, your federal funding will be ceased. That was like another letter wake-up call. There was supposed to be a promise 2 weeks ago that an executive order would be positioned, blah, blah, blah. It was pulled back because there was some lobbying going on with some very significant technology leaders. Again, the power and the venture capital community saying this is going to stifle innovation. So how wrong we're doing things. So US right now is highly deregulated, relying on the regulators, and you think about software industries, right? You're trying to go in to sell to California, you got to look at those laws. We just can't keep this up. In the EU, they're moving along, maybe a little bit slower, but they're doing a lot of the right things. I really applaud a lot of the efforts that have gone in because they've looked at high-risk applications, and we should have laws that say if there's something going wrong, you better have a kill switch. And I got to speed up. I got 5 minutes, so thank you. China is very, I don't know, I know you weren't saying that, I'm just teasing. China is very state-driven, control-heavy. The nice thing about China, when they want to put some muscle in, they can really wrap things around because they've got their arms around things. Canada and our country, which I love desperately. I'm a Northern Albertan. I think there's a few Albertans here. Here's a shout out for, maybe that's why I talk the way I do a little bit. Grew up there. But we're lagging. We were leading 5 years ago. We had a lot of the good policy structures. Things got slowed down. We now have a new minister, Evan Solomon. I submitted papers on terms of strategic thinking to actually move things along. I wrote about 25 pages. We still don't have a strategy, let alone legislative frameworks. What we do know, because I've got lots of friends and contacts over there, there's a promise. But we're not leading anymore. We had a chance to lead. We were ahead. We were 5 years ahead. So going back to Mike's comment, can we please start acting? Because each of you has so much opportunity to make a difference. The other reason that we wrote the book was to provide examples of blueprints and finding your way. I've had the pleasure of building very complex AI models for very large companies, and I can honestly tell you everyone's a little bit different, but everyone that we've done is scaling. So I'm very proud of that. But there's some reasons why. First, on the leadership front, and Hillary stressed this, a lot of this is about governance and leadership and measurable outcomes. You really need to step back as a leadership team. The board of directors, the executives have to get upskilled and educated. If I gave most board directors or CEOs or leaders a test on AI and the language, I tell you most of them would fail. Hillary, I know, would verify that. We've got to recognize this is important as learning financial fundamentals of a balance sheet and income statement. How can you communicate if you don't really understand the language? AI is such a broad perspective, and there's so many methods, so many different toolkits, so many different algorithmic methods. And don't always believe your CIO or CTO that they have the right answer. You need other advisors because this is moving that fast. You have to test every use case with every different AI model enablement. Bedrock, at Amazon, it really likes Bedrock is very nicely structured because I can keep hypothesizing, pop one in, see what the results are. But you know what? The accuracy changes every week now. So you really need the depth there and the flexibility. The second thing I want to stress on innovation, the reason Canada's not growing is because we are not producing enough patents. So here's an area where I look at strategically and say, you know what, this is a great time. Same with the UK, because there's lots. Let's start writing patents, because that impacts our innovation rankings. If we don't start writing patents, it's not going to drive the rankings. So each of you, as you're in your teams, think about having patents written as you're innovating and ideating right at the beginning. Bring in the legal. The lawyer's not at the table fast enough, or a patent lawyer, or a workflow. There's opportunities for process patents. The Americans have figured that one out. You just have to follow, right? The other point I want to make in the last one, I got 2 minutes left, maybe just to stress a couple, is, actually I'm going to go back. I know that we often, I can't process all these points. On the talent front, one thing I've learned is when you hear at these conferences, go and link in with people on LinkedIn and ask them questions. We have to tap into each other to drive that community fabric and that tapestry to drive, I think, very different outcomes. In the book, and obviously I hope, and by the way, if you want a 30% discount, it's at the front of that first slide, just to let you know. The things I think you have to get right is to understand the real question, and I think the real question really needs to be answered, is what is the future you want to shape, not just for your company. I think it's also about your whole ecosystem, and I think that the executives that have a strategy around that deeply, simply, and it go down, and I can't stress the empowerment message that was mentioned. We have to rethink how do we bring the knowledge of our young people who are absolutely very comfortable. They don't understand all of the risks. I mean, I will say that. And they don't necessarily understand process, all of them. However, think about shaping more change agent networks, bringing their voices up. But it's going to take not just a village, it's going to take an incredible energy force of what Canada really wants to be as a country. And we have a window, but the window will close at the speed, that the velocity that this is moving at. I cannot keep up, and that's very worrisome, because it's the first time in my life that I've not been able to keep up in the domain that I've been deepest at for many, many years, and that's very concerning. So I can empathize with how others feel, but you need to lean into each other, because together we have the answers. So thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.